right, man. So this is the 6th time we're doing this. Actually, the 7th time. We won't get into the 6th time. The 6th time will never air. You'll never see it.
It's just going to be a whole different topic.
It went off the rails a little bit, and it went into a territory that I don't think was on brand for us. So
you mean it went off the hard drive?
Something like that. So this is actually podcast 7, but it's podcast 6.
Yes.
So if you're listening at home, this is podcast number 6.
We apologize. We did shoot this podcast 4 weeks ago.
We did.
But unfortunately, we had technical when I say we, I mean the other guy on the other end of this had technical difficulties. And if we had have released it, the only people that would have enjoyed it would have been the deaf people that are able to read lips.
Yeah, people that read lips.
That's pretty much the only people that would have got to enjoy the podcast.
It would have been a really weird audio podcast.
It would have been very silent and peaceful. They could have added it to calm.
Yeah. So there's a problem with the audio, but again, as we were just talking about, it'd be nice if we had 2 mics each. So we had stereo with each one of us.
Do you really think people should be able to hear me in both ears?
I don't know.
Oh, that sounds
right now,
dead.
I think they're listening to you in the left ear. I have no idea.
So why are we here again, by the way?
So I don't know. Why are we here? We're here to run a podcast. I thought maybe we'd start with something that happened a while ago. Seems like ages ago, but it wasn't that long ago. We went down to Sacramento to visit Metalcloak.
It seems like forever ago.
It was forever ago. And so that was 1,450 kilometers.
In 2.5 days.
In 2.5 days. It was about 26 hours of driving for a 6-hour, 7-hour visit.
Yes.
We did get lunch out of it, though.
We did get a very good Mexican lunch.
Mike gave us a really, really good Mexican lunch.
That was good.
But yeah, so that's in miles and freedom increments. That's about 900 miles each way.
Yes.
So yeah, going down there did in like 14.
We got the full tour. They took my entire Canadian loony.
Yeah, they took our loony. They didn't know what to do with it, but
they probably just threw it out.
They let us just walk around the place, which I thought was kind of weird because usually don't want to
let Metalcloak diner in the middle.
Yeah, that's really cool.
That was great. It was full of free stuff. I just kept stuffing my pockets with it.
I was having Gatorades. There's a Red Bull in there.
It was great. They needed a bar, but
did a couple of Red Bulls just to keep my.
That explained the driving.
Yeah, pretty much. But so we did that with Metalcloak. So we had the tour. You'll see more on our channel now if you haven't seen already on our YouTube channel. We've got some more Metalcloak stuff coming out. Metalcloak's just a really, really different brand for us, but we're starting to do it. So we have our 2 two-doors, and so those videos will be coming out. Christian and I bought 2 two-doors, and we put Metalcloak suspensions in them. And
it's pretty much one of the only 2 brands I believe we should allow into Canada because they'll survive it.
Yeah, they'll survive it. Yeah. So that's a Metalcloak trip. That happened since the last time. But this one, again, everything is usually based on the feedback we get and the questions we get on the regular. People phoning us and messaging us through social media is really what people want to hear about is gears, axles, differential stuff. So that's what today's episode is. So again, this is podcast number 6. The name of this podcast is Ring of Desire, Pinion of Passion. We're 2 dudes, 1 wrench. What is this we have today on the desk, sir?
This is a snap-on 3/4-inch wrench.
Can I touch it?
You can. Here you go. You can touch the wrench.
Nice.
That wrench is here out of spite.
Out of spite, okay.
Because normally I would never need this wrench to do a lift kit, but there are some companies that still use imperial bolt sizes.
Who is this? Who does this?
Lots, actually. Okay. Anything that you see that's a grade 8 bolt is basically not metric. Yep. So. Unfortunately, like when you go to grab for your typical 18 or 21 mil socket and it don't fit.
It don't fit.
It's going to be a 19 because someone used the bolt bin at, Harbor Freight?
Harbor Freight.
Or something, but, whatever. Yeah. The metric system was only out since last week anyway, so.
Yeah. So anyways, that's a wrench we
that's what we chose, and that's the story behind it.
And that's a snap-on wrench, too,
That's a snap-on wrench that
Was that paid for?
I don't care. Anymore. Like, if you can't find me, I don't have to pay you.
Yeah, it's just a monthly payment.
Yeah, that's just how that works. Everything's a monthly payment now in 2024.
Oh, man.
So you know what really grinds my gears?
Yes, that's what I was going to ask. What grinds your gears?
4.5 weeks ago, I realized...
That was a long time ago.
That all that money I invested years ago in the Backstreet Boys and in Sync went to a Ponzi scheme.
What?
The biggest Ponzi scheme in American history.
Backstreet Boys and NSYNC was a Ponzi scheme.
There is a documentary on the Netflix called Dirty Pop.
Okay.
And it talks about...
Why are you watching this? Okay.
This grotesque individual that just kept taking advantage of building boy bands and taking money out somehow in all these weird ways. And luckily, he's dead now. Okay. So, one, we don't have any more boy bands showing up. And two, just exploiting children.
Terrible.
It's horrible.
How much money did you lose?
We're not going to talk about that. Okay. But I'm a mechanic and didn't go to university for a reason.
Pretty much, yeah.
So
that checks out. All
right. What do you want to know today?
So basically, we're going to talk about gears today. And so just at the top, this is a very high-level introductory talk on gears, axles, that kind of stuff, differentials. This is not a scientific podcast. We are not Bill Nye. We won't get into metallurgies and things like that. But just based on the questions we get
don't have the budget for those guests that Joe Rogan has. Sorry.
Yeah, we don't. Yeah.
So I'm going to start off by saying, take everything I say with a grain of sand.
Yes.
I am a Canadian Red Seal mechanic.
Yes.
With an expired license.
You didn't want to pay the yes.
I didn't want to pay the racketeering cost in Ontario to keep the piece of paper relevant.
Yeah.
So I have no idea what I'm talking about because the paper expired.
Okay. Well, we'll take that with the grain of sand or salt, as you said. But yeah, we have a lot of experience with gears, either breaking them, choosing the right ones, doing stuff with them. We understand.
And we're not talking about the gear we bring.
Yeah, not the gear we bring, but actual gears and your differentials, right? So first off, why would you change gears? I think that comes up a lot as people come in here and say, I need 513 gears, or I need 492 gears, I need 488 gears. Like, why do I need gears, right? So maybe start off with a bit of why you would choose.
It's a really simple thing. It's actually a pretty easy math equation because the vehicle you're driving was geared for the tire size it came with.
Right.
That's it. It's that simple.
Right.
If you change the tire size, you are no longer geared to proper tire size.
Gotcha.
So that could be as easy and cut and dry. Everyone should regear.
Okay.
Everybody.
Okay.
I don't care what engine you have. I don't care how big a tire you go with. If it changes from stock, you would be better off with a regear.
So if I have a Rubicon, for example, because that's the primary vehicle we see here, a Rubicon Wrangler comes with 33-inch tires.
Yep.
And so, I've got 410 gearing in there, and all of a sudden I'm going to throw on some big 37s.
Yes.
I might even, now we're seeing 38s out there.
We might even see 42s. You never know.
Yeah, we're seeing 42s now, 40s and 42s. So when I do that, so if I don't regear, so in other words, I put 37s on my Jeep and I don't regear, what's really happening? What's
the more tire sizes you go up,
the
less gears in the transmission you get to utilize.
Yeah, that's a way of looking at it.
Also, the more effort your vehicle is going to have to put into getting across the intersection.
Right.
So just getting from a stop is harder.
So
for
just
the vehicle.
getting up to cruising speed,
just moving
around
the vehicle
town, moving the vehicle. Period.
Moving the vehicle,
especially off road too.
Moving the vehicle. Honestly, stopping the vehicle.
Yeah.
Mileage is highly effective. Torque and horsepower is affected.
Right.
All those things are affected, and without doing the proper gear change, your vehicle is just not going to drive optimally.
Right.
It's the best way I can drive. So if you're going to do 37s, so there's a couple different ways where you have to look at it. One, if you're just going to do 37s, drive around, and you're going to just off-road and be happy about it, you might be okay, say, gas motor doing 456.
Right.
And that'll get a little better gas mileage. If you're going to off-road the vehicle and you just want to have the proper math equation, we do a 488.
Right.
Now,
so maybe let's talk as you're getting into the gear ratios. Let's talk about TireSize.com because that's what we've been using just to help people kind of pick
TireSize.com has a couple
gear.
calculators that just make it easier than me punching into a calculator.
Yep.
So you punch in the tire size you start with, which most is a 285/70/17.
Right. Yep.
I think that's that monster size tire they put on Tacomas after they're lifted.
Yeah, that's a big
You have
tire.
to chop the frame to fit it.
To fit that.
It's a huge
Tacoma.
tire.
Yeah.
Like it's big. Trust me.
So your stock
big.
Jeep tire. Okay.
Stock Jeep tire.
Okay,
big.
go ahead.
Really big.
Yeah.
You're going to put that number in. You're going to put the tire you want to go in next.
Right.
You're going to put the gearing you have stock.
Right.
So that'd be 410s.
Yep.
And then you hit convert. And it's going to give you the ideal gear choice. And now...
Well, it's going to give you the math. And
it's going to give you the math. And you got to take into account...
Yeah.
You got to take it also with a grain of sand because there's a lot of variables. A 37-inch tire, not a 37.
Right.
So even though you wrote 37, it's going to do the math equation based on a 37. You don't have a 37.
Yeah, it could be a 36.
If you have a BFG, you've got like a 32.
Right. Yeah,
and but all the other brands usually have a 36.
Yep.
So, but put in 37. It's going to punch out a number. Rule of thumb, because the number's going to come out, go above it.
Yeah, go above.
So if it gives you the number of like 4, 6 something.
Yeah.
go up to 48. Don't go down to 456.
Right. Yeah.
You're going to be
so
happier
go a bit
with it.
steeper. That's called going a bit steeper than.
Yeah. Your transmission is phenomenal and can make up a lot.
Right.
Because of it. But it doesn't it can still make up for not regearing, but you're just not going to like it.
Yeah. Especially if you add weight.
Yes. If you add weight. So
your
now
engine's working harder. Yeah.
We're going 488s for 37s on most.
Yeah.
Rubicons. Now.
Most gas Rubicons.
That doesn't count for Overlanders.
Right.
They are different.
Very different breed.
They
very odd.
Go camping.
I bring everything.
With everything.
Everything.
Like, they bring enough so everybody in the area can go camping.
Talk like 3 types of camping chairs.
Yeah, like you got to have different
4
camping
stoves,
chairs, at least a Yeti cooler plus a fridge.
20 gallons of water.
At least a 4-person tent for every one person.
4-person tent for your dog.
Yeah, tent for your dog.
There's lots there.
2 awnings, at least 2 awnings.
2 awnings each side.
Probably at least 36 lights.
Yeah.
But all of that equates to your vehicle is now heavy.
Way heavier, yeah.
9 times out of 10, if you're an Overlander, your vehicle is above gross vehicle weight. It's just the way it is.
Listen to our podcast. It was 2 podcasts ago, number 5,
I don't
4 or 5.
remember anything.
We talked about Overlanders' weight and stuff like that,
Yes.
but that factors into that.
Yeah.
So you have a very heavy vehicle.
Which, don't feel bad, every Overlander's
Everybody
overweight.
does it.
It's just the way it is. I'm overweight, so are all the Overlanders. It's fine. So... I don't have diabetes. I'm working on it. Let's see. So, if we're going to put a heavy rooftop tent, which basically acts like a sail,
right,
and then all the other stuff, we might even consider going as deeper,
even
do
deeper.
a 513.
Yeah, even steeper.
It's just kind of
so somebody like with an alu cab or like
so
a smart
you're talking
cab.
a Gladiator. Now we're in a different ballpark.
We're a totally different ballpark. That
so
way, but,
the Gladiator with an alu cab, 100% needs deeper gear.
Yeah.
Like the
so
alu cab
37s
is heavy.
With the alu cab, we're doing 513s.
Yeah,
like we've
513s. We just did
4 or 5 of them in the last 2 weeks here.
I think 2 or 3 in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, we've done
513s.
Quite a few. Yeah, 513s.
So they all had different canopy campers, or a canopy with a tent on top of the canopy, and they're all very heavy. Most of them were gas.
Right.
We had one diesel one, which we went to a 488.
Yeah.
But diesel's a different animal. Yeah. Consider whatever you do with a gas, do one less for the diesel.
Right. Yeah.
Because the diesels all comes 373, Rubicon or not.
Yep.
So technically, you're starting 1 gear behind because that's the optimal gear for 33-inch tire that they have. So if you bump your way up, putting a 513 on a diesel with some weight on it, your mileage is going to go a little bit shit. Yeah. And your RPMs on the highway are going to be quite higher.
Yeah. That's something I don't think people understand as well. I get that a lot. Is I try to say to them, hey, if you're going 60 miles an hour, about 100 kilometers an hour on the highway, you're just below 2,000 RPM on a gas Gladiator
and you're
Wrangler.
Well under that with a diesel.
And so now if you're going to go put gears on there, it might turn out, and especially if you're going to go steeper, as you've been saying, you might all of a sudden now be hitting 2,200 RPM, right? So your gas mileage might be affected a little bit, but again, your engine drivetrain, your vehicle itself is not working anywhere near as hard. It's gotten that benefit of having those gears. Yeah.
So the other thing, a lot of people come at me and be like, oh, if I have a diesel, those 37's fine, I don't need to regear.
Right.
You do.
So... But the torque, I can see why people say that, because the torque in the EcoDiesel is amazing.
It's a torque monster, but it's also a Volkswagen Golf engine, basically. Yeah. So though it may have the power to do it, it's stressed.
Right. Yeah.
And we all have seen and read the threads on the internet is once it gets stressed out, we start having EGR problems, overheating problems. It doesn't like a hot day going up a steep highway. Yeah. So that's why we regear. Yep. So it doesn't have to work as hard. Or we cater to the motor, whether it be making sure it gets lots of clean air, don't block the rad, put a better rad, maybe put the new 24 grill on, all that kind of stuff.
Don't put giant LP9s in front of your
don't
grill.
Don't put the beautiful LP9s in front of your grill. Keep them in the passenger seat because you paid a lot for them.
Want to keep them
don't
pristine.
Put them outside.
Yeah. So why because we do a lot of builds for people just getting into wheeling, and we also do a lot of builds for turnkey builds and end up at dealerships. That's just part of our
we don't
business
do any
model.
for people getting out of wheeling.
Not getting out of it.
That's strange.
But when we do that, is we typically don't change the gears at all.
No.
And we're like, why didn't you change the? And the whole internet lights up.
Oh, the internet lights up.
They
didn't even change the gears for that vehicle they built.
So why?
Because gearing is very personal.
It's a personal choice.
You don't want me to choose your shoes in the morning, do you?
No.
Do you want me to choose the kind of underwear that you're going to order from MeUndies?
I would prefer that you didn't.
Okay, good.
I prefer that I had a part in choosing that.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. Just as long as you don't anger your wife now. So, that said, we don't know what the end purchaser is going to do with the Jeep.
Right. Yeah.
So, for all we know, they're going to buy that Jeep, and they're just going to throw axles under it. So then they just paid for a regear that's just thrown away.
For no reason. Yeah.
So, or they're going to go really heavy.
Yep.
Or lightweight.
Or really light.
Or there's, for all you know, they might buy and take the lift out of it.
Yep.
There's been all kinds of things.
Or they're driving super long distances where, mileage
they might go down a tire size. So why spend the money, which will also instantly void the axle warranty? 100%.
Yep.
Because the dealerships and Chrysler are afraid of high quality parts being put in place of theirs. So that's
maybe that's kind of the next thing that we get to is the brands that we use. And so there's a bunch of different brands. You have Yukon, you have all the way through the Dana gears. The gears we always use are.
So the reason we do things a little different than most people, we're not in it to make money. We are in it because most of our customers aren't just weekend wheelers. They're going the distance.
Right.
They need reliability. They want low maintenance. They're going to drive. They don't want to be servicing their vehicle all the time. They don't want to have an issue, say, on the way to Tuktoyaktuk, where there's not a lot of gear shops.
Where we have 2 clients right now.
Yes.
At the top of the world right now.
So that said, we use Dana Spicer gears.
Right.
They are, in my opinion, the most reliable and best gear choice if they come for your application.
Right.
So they designed and built the diff. Why not use their gears in it?
Right.
So the nice thing is the way they're made, they barely have a break-in.
Okay.
I've put multiple different kinds of gears in over the years. And after like 1,000 to 5,000 K, when you go to change the oil, it comes out silver.
Right.
Like literally liquid, melted down, cheap silver watches.
Yeah, I've had that too before. Yeah.
So I've changed the gear oil from after doing the Spicer gears, and it comes out like clean.
Just normal.
So that one thing right there already makes it, to me, stand up a little better. I've had no issues with them losing hardening.
Right.
Because I've had other brands where the hardening disappeared.
Yep.
I've had other brands where the teeth break off.
Right.
Easier. I have other brands that just don't have a good pattern when I'm done with it.
Yeah.
So we have had to warranty, I think, maybe one set in 12 years.
I think it's one set.
And it might have just been from a harmonic noise for a 488.
Right.
And that was it. So to me, that's standing up.
Yep.
And I want my customer to have the most reliable choice. It's not that I want to make the most margin on the gear. It's not that I just want to promote whatever, like,
no.
We don't take pay in the back end here and be like, oh, I'll push those gears. Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, we're here to run a business, but at the same time, I'd rather give somebody the best that's tested that we can stand behind. I don't got to worry about it. Like, again, I have 2 clients right now who are just up at the Arctic Circle and beyond.
With a giant Ram we built them.
One with a giant Ram, another one with a Jeep. So it's kind of like, I don't want to hear of any problems there. I want them to go up there, have a great time, take amazing photos, and come back, right?
100%.
They'll just come back with broken windows that I can't help them with. But
yeah, we don't do windshields.
But besides that, that's kind of the thing. So I think that comes to my next thing that we get all the time is people are surprised and they say, okay, you guys have a couple of Red Seal mechanics here. You know what you're doing. We don't actually do the gear changes in Epic. We don't do it here. No. We actually use somebody who is an absolute professional, and that's all he does all day long is gear changes.
Which may have led to some craziness.
May have. But maybe
gear
address
oil
that.
Might have some...
Gear oil got up in the...
Yeah.
But maybe talk about that. Like, why don't we do it here? So, there's a couple of good reasons.
There's a couple really good reasons. Reason number one.
I don't
want the smell I don't want the shop to smell.
Yeah, gear oil is terrible.
Yeah, I don't like it.
It's terrible.
I don't really want to do a lot of fluid work here, but realistically, it's an art form.
Yeah.
You can ask anyone who knows anything. It's an art form. It's not something... Yes, there's lots of people out there that can bang a gear job out in their backyard in the weekend, or they could... But we're not talking about weekend wheeling machines. We're not talking about like a TJ you bought for $5,000.
Yeah.
These are like $80,000 to $100,000 vehicles before they get modified in Canada. Like, we need top tier stuff done that's reliable.
Right.
And when something goes wrong with gears, it's not quick. So it's like, if you have anything happen with gears, it's a day.
Right.
So you just lost a day of profit, or your shop got tied up for a day, or you've got to find a day to help that problem.
Yeah.
So it's not something we want to do.
Plus, you have to stock a whole bunch of parts, whether it be shims,
you have to
kits,
have
like
a ton of specialty tools to do it right. Some you have to make
your own,
because there's not a perfect tool for everything. Sometimes you have to have the perfect tool.
Right.
Another thing that sets our the way we have gears done, and our gear guy who swears by a certain way of doing things, and he won't budge even if I told him to.
Right.
I'm not a fan of rebuild or install kits.
Right. Yeah.
So you see them all over the place. You'll have like a sale. It's like, oh, I'll get 2 sets of gears and an install kit.
Yeah.
That's not a great thing. It's more of a disservice than it is a sale and a great thing to get, because in that kit you're going to get a lot of times subpar bearings.
Right.
And you're going to get multi-shim packs.
Yeah, multi-shim packs or subpar shims.
And honestly, like from factory, and the way it should be done is 1 shim per side.
Right.
1 hardened shim per side.
Yeah.
So I've had issues with multi-shim packs over the years.
I definitely have.
You had them crack and fall out.
I definitely have.
There's just, it's more costly. It's a lot harder. So I think
for people, when you put a diff together and you have the shims on the left and right side of the carrier bearing, and so the way I explain it is, in my situation 12 plus years ago, before I knew you, before we started this, 12 plus years ago, as I had my gears done by a very, very reputable shop in the States.
Yep.
And so basically the job called for 5,000 inch on one side and 4 on the other. And so what I ended up with was 2 2s and a 1 to make 5 on that one side, thou, and then I had 2 2s on the other. And so again, you're not supposed to, as we know from our current gear guy, you should just put in a 5 and a 4. Like what you needed, you should have 1 single shim in there.
Which is a lot harder to stock.
Well, yeah, because you have to have a whole bunch of different shims.
And they're good shims, so they're not. We're not talking like $1.
So
we're
I'm
not talking $1 for
the
shim.
Yeah, and then the metallurgy around it, as I understand, that's why he doesn't buy cheap shims, right? You're buying shims, again, they've already been heat treated or whatever the metallurgy.
These aren't commuter cars. These are cars that get shaken apart.
There's a lot of torque,
have impacts, have lockers, all this stuff that's the detriment of anything that's not in place perfectly.
Right. Yeah.
So if our guy stocks all solid shims.
Yeah.
And he checks everyone before he puts them in with a micrometer, make sure it's right. So, because I would never find the right one without measuring.
Right.
So I've done gears several times. I was a dealer technician. I've rebuilt many GM diffs because they failed a lot in the front end of trucks. I've done Jeep diffs. It's just, you can do it or you can do it well.
Yeah.
And I stand behind, do what you're good at, pay people to do what you're not.
Yeah, exactly.
So I don't ever want to be jack of all trades.
No.
I want to specialize, and that's why he has specialized in gears.
Yep.
And we don't.
Yeah, we just don't.
So
we specialize in
the best service I can do for a lot of people is to let them know where to get to the best service.
Right. Yeah.
So if someone comes to me and they have a vehicle that we don't work on, I do my best to find them a place that might be able to provide a quality level of service.
Yep.
It's getting harder and harder.
Right. Yeah.
But that's really how we want to do things.
Yeah. You mentioned break-in period. So again, with the Dana Spicer sets that we have, the break-in period's pretty simple. I found with my Yukon gears and stuff in the past, the break-in period takes a bit, and you got to be careful.
Yeah, you've got to really. You can't just go out to the drag strip afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which you shouldn't do with any gear.
You shouldn't do with any gears, but
any gear set. But realistically, you're going easy on them for the first few hundred thousand, or few hundred kilometers or 1,000 or thing, and then it's good to change the oil.
Yeah, change the oil. And usually when you change the oil and you drain it, that gives you a really good indication of what's happening in there. If things have been done right,
like
or
if little pieces are coming out, things aren't good.
Yeah, when you have a silver swirl in your fluid, that's usually a bad thing.
Oh,
I've had that before too, but I'm like,
I thought it was flavor.
No, it's not the flavor.
Oh,
You're not supposed to drink your diff fluid. We just talked about you don't like the smell of it. You don't drink it. Well, you don't. Yeah.
I'm still recovering.
Yeah. And then next part is people ask us a lot about lockers, right? So in the Rubicon has what kind of lockers when you buy a Rubicon?
Rubicon has factory electric front and rear lockers.
Right.
The new Willys, luckily, now has the Rubicon's factory rear electric locker, none in the front.
Yeah.
So you and I are going to do lockers.
Yeah, what are we doing in ours?
Because we're gonna trial test them both. We've both owned most of the lockers in old vehicles.
Yeah.
But we're gonna do it in these JL 2-door things, these little ninjas of vehicles.
So I'm doing e-locker.
You're doing an e-locker, which turns out is significantly more money.
Of course it is.
We found out, which is weird because it needs less to run it. But you're going to do that. I went with A or B because I wanted to justify the fortune I'm spending to be able to disconnect my sway bar with air.
Oh, that's right. You did that for your sway
because
bar.
I'm running my Rubicon sway bar disconnect with an air system.
Yeah. Press the button, pushes air, opens
added that,
yeah.
the air lines, the control panel, the air compressor.
Yeah.
Well, I might as well run 2 things with it. Then it justifies having it all in there.
Doing.
So, because I got to make a custom bracket for the air compressor and a few other things. But
so I think a lot of people come up and they just say, "What's better? Should I do an E-locker or should I do an ARB locker?"
There's a couple of ways. The industry thinks the ARB has the best engagement,
right?
Because it basically like engages instead of slips in or out of engagement.
Yeah.
Second thing, if you're in a race or whatever, you can still run full air to that if it ends up leaking.
Yeah.
The downside is technically you're running 2 systems to activate the locker.
Right. Yeah.
So you've got to have an electrical system that's going to turn on and run a compressor. Then you have to have the electrical activate the solenoid to send air to the locker.
Right. Yeah.
Your Eaton E-locker is going to be send electrical to turn the locker on.
And that's it. Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah.
So both great companies.
Yeah.
Eaton specifically will not warranty their lockers if used with synthetic oil.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
They prefer full 100% dinosaur.
They like pure dinosaurs.
Yeah, specifically Stegosaurus.
They don't like the fake dinosaurs.
No.
Yeah. Interesting.
None of those velociraptors either. There's too many feathers.
What comes up a lot too is funny over time, and so many times this comes up, is with an ARB air locker, especially when people run a pump inside the vehicle.
Ooh, excellent idea.
Yeah, don't do that. Because fluid travels up the airline and it pukes out into your air pump. And so I've seen that so many times.
Why does that happen? Flooded passenger seat.
Yeah, so why does that happen? Because that smell is bad. You can't get rid of it.
Sometimes it's air in the system.
Yeah.
Sometimes there could be a failure inside the locker.
Right.
But technically, the only place for pressure to go, and the easiest way to pressure to go is back up the airline.
Back up the airline when it's off.
It's either that or it blows your seals out.
Yeah.
So,
because I've had that happen to me on my JK days, twice that happened to me.
But at least you had that wired in the engine compartment.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
But we've had customers come here where underneath the passenger seat was a puddle of gear oil.
Yeah, because they had their pump under there.
Which is like, that's not so. Ladies and gentlemen, don't use the Kraken to run your lockers.
Yeah, don't do that.
Like, anything's possible. You could probably run a toaster off the Kraken.
Yeah.
But
but you shouldn't.
You shouldn't. Like, let's just start out. Like, there's a purpose to run things in a certain way. That's why I'm doing the tiny, tiny little compressor from ARB that's just meant to run lockers, or locker solenoids, and so it's going to run my locker and my sway bar disconnects.
Where's that going? Is that going in the engine compartment?
I am going to custom make a bracket with Landon for the engine compartment.
Gotcha.
Probably for it and the Switch Pro's head unit.
Right. Axle shafts. We get that a lot too. People are like, "Oh, I need to swap my axle shafts out because I need chromoly axle shafts."
Yes, definitely get chromoly axles.
So again, I've broken axles before. I've twisted splines. I know you have as well. So let's talk about axles.
The nice thing about axle shafts, if you do upgrade, they're usually lifetime warranted.
Yep.
But
they have to
catch-22. You have to break it.
You actually have to snap them.
So last time you had chromoly axle shafts, all you did was bent the flange.
I bent the flange.
So you hit something hard enough where the flange on the shaft just got a little out of line.
So every time I pressed the brake, I had the...
So his brakes started wearing weird because it would just keep moving the caliper because it wouldn't run true. We tried machining, changed the brakes, and we figured out it was the only fix was to buy another lifetime warranted axle shaft because we didn't break the axle shaft.
Yeah.
So that's the downside. That's also with like the RCV shafts in the front. A lot of people like to switch out the fronts to not have U-joints.
Right. Yeah.
To put the RCV, which is then lifetime warranted, but not the internals.
Yeah, it's got to snap.
Unless you break them.
It's got to snap.
And you're not likely going to break those.
Yep.
So the downside, you have to maintain them.
Yeah.
The boot, though fancy, tends to not keep the grease inside.
Yeah, the RCV
So it does make a mess, but is a better off-road axle shaft if that's your main focus. So
talking about front axle shafts, if you go to RCV, because we have quite a few clients that do that. For me, I always look at it like I wouldn't mind having a U-joint there because if something's going to give, I'd rather the U-joint cave inside.
Well, that's the other thing.
As opposed to my diff blowing up.
Where do you want the fuse to be?
I want the fuse to be the easiest place I can get to not ruin my day, right?
Yeah.
Because I can pull an axle shaft out and still drive home. But if my gears and my teeth blow up inside because the fuse is inside in the diff, well, then I've got a different problem.
Yeah, or if maybe it's your drive shaft lets go and also snaps the case of your transmission and transfer case because it lets go. So now most people don't even use 1310 U-joints in their drive shaft anymore. They're up to 1350s.
1350s.
So you're just moving that fuse along.
Yeah.
The 1310 has a better working angle, but the 1350 is stronger.
Yeah. And I get a lot of people are like, oh, I have to have axle shafts because I'm running 37s or 38s and I wheel every weekend. Again, why do axle shafts break? Axle shafts break, because usually of shock load.
Yep.
So
skinny pedal wheeler.
The few times that I've really broken axle shafts is usually in the snow. So I'm giving way more skinny pedal than I should. Both times it actually happened to me, I pretty much guessed it was going to happen in the next 10 minutes. I'm like, well, this is going to happen.
Well,
Let's
you're
just go
gunning
for
it, and then finally
all of a sudden you get traction,
and
you get a shock load, whether it's all of a sudden grabbing traction, or even all of a sudden it's got traction and it lets go really fast, right? So losing or gaining traction.
That brings me to my next point.
And it is?
Our filmographer had a little bit of an issue 2 weeks ago.
Oh, he did too.
Yes. He shock loaded his rear diff.
Yes,
and he used a fancy toothbrush that brushed 4 teeth off.
Yes.
And that left him...
It's funny, but it's not funny.
Not driving.
I feel for him. Yeah.
The worst part is he was like 10 kilometers from the trail he was heading to do.
Way across British
8
Columbia.
hours from home.
Way across British Columbia, yeah.
He couldn't even get a tow truck home. He had to take 2.
Now, granted, that's a 392 Hemi V8 and a Gladiator.
And he wears that
special...
Load. I think he always has those cement Air Jordans.
I think he does, yeah.
Yeah, those Air, like...
Just helps you press the pedal down faster.
Yeah,
you don't have to use as much muscle to go faster with your legs.
I think his foot is heavier than yours, which is hard to believe.
Yeah, because I don't wear the cement shoes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I might pick them up.
I don't know. He's watched way too many mobster movies.
Yes. But again, gears, axle shafts, things break, usually under shock load. Not always, but that's generally what it is.
And that was a shock. Everything else was mint. The gear looked mint. It literally was an instant 4 spot that it cracked because of like the shock load. Yeah. And which is still amazing that it did that. Yeah. But it's lasted for years.
And that was a high-quality part.
And that was a high-quality part. Yeah. So anything's possible with the right amount of torque and horsepower applied.
For sure.
Especially when you have full traction on pavement with brand new tires.
Yeah, yeah. That's true. We did do that.
Hence the video we just released where he got new tires.
Got new tires.
So, because the burnout was done before the new tires.
Burnout, yes.
Yeah, which was also on that same gear set.
So it was all together.
No idea why.
Maybe this is all why this happened,
But it all depends. Like, honestly, people will be like, oh, you need this to wheel. You need this, you need this. It all depends on the type of driver you are and where you're using it. Yeah. Like, I've never bought a set of Dana 60s.
No, I never have either.
I've bought very few skid plates.
Yep.
I've bought normally 37s.
Yep.
I did the Rubicon with 35s and one locker.
Yep. So why do some of our customers change whole diff assemblies? So a lot of people might not know. So what that's part of Instagram because they see it. But what comes in a Gladiator or a Wrangler is essentially a Dana 44.
Yes.
It's a new version of Dana 44. And so when you go to a Dana 60 or you go to a rear Dana 80, what is changing when you go to those? What is bigger? Everything's bigger. Bigger axle shafts, bigger brakes, bigger diff, bigger gear set, bigger everything.
So they're bigger, they're wider, they're heavier,
right?
They're stronger.
Yep.
They have more maintenance,
right?
Which we've found recently.
Yep.
Having locking hubs is nice. Maintaining locking hubs, not as fun.
Not as fun.
Especially last minute. Yeah. Definitely not as fun.
Yep. So we had that with Sean. Story till now. He has a Dana 60 up front, and just before he's leaving for Easter Jeep Safari, I think it was, like literally the night he was leaving.
He was getting a lot of ABS codes, and
a lot of ABS codes, changed the sensors.
The hub was moving enough because it was worn out and the bearings were shot.
But we took it apart, and it was essentially just mud jam.
Oh yeah, it right through the seal.
So it's like sandpaper and just corrosion.
So that depends where you wheel, right? Yep. So Sean wheels up here in the rainforest, the Pacific Northwest.
Yep. He's always in mud.
It's not Moab all the
Silt,
time.
sand, mud. That's
just,
normal up here.
Like I said, our stuff gets destroyed.
Yeah,
and I guess that should get looked into every 6 months. Yeah. Like that hub, which is annoying. Yeah. And the parts are from like a 1979 Ford F-250.
That's true.
I'm amazed I found the parts.
We managed to find them in about
at a parts store, and it took a while. And one of the parts said for the rear diff.
Yeah.
But it was for the front. So
put it all together.
But we did all that, put it back together, got him on the road. Then when he got back, I had the other side completely done as well.
Yeah.
But it got loose enough that it technically messed up the race or the spindle,
the bearing race,
which is where it rides on. So when he got back, we had to have, because obviously that wasn't lying around on the shelf.
Right. We had to
have that changed as well. So there's just things you need to know
Yeah.
It's like a trailer. If you own a trailer, you can't just take the trailer every time you need it.
Yeah.
You need to service the trailer once a year.
Yeah.
Probably before you start using it. You should take the bearings apart, because otherwise you'll be one of those guys that we make fun of on the side of the road with their boat off on the tire way down the road going, oh, how'd that happen? Lack of maintenance. That's how that happened. It never happens by accident.
By accident. There's a reason for it. So over the last 6 months or so, the axles that we've done, so we've done a set of Fusion axles.
We've done a couple. We've done a few sets of AMW axles.
AMW axles, yeah.
60-80 combos.
Right.
We've done 60-60 AMW combos, which was actually a Ultimate 60 Dana Track, Dana Spicer combo rear, and then the other front. We did a set of Fusion Kingpin axles, 60-80 combo. Those were pretty cool. I'm not going to lie, that's in one of my favorite trucks, which is that Bob Bed EcoDiesel buddy of mine. And then we're about to start, Dana Track axles are arriving later this week.
Yes. For a customer who's running 42s.
For a customer who requires 42s.
It's a 392 Wrangler.
2024.
2024 392 Wrangler.
Yep.
We're doing the Dana 42s. Axles on 42s. The tires are here. I can't believe the size of them.
The internet told him he can just do that on his stock axles, but he decided not to.
He's smart. He listened to us.
Yes.
But generally, we do axles when people come in and they have to run 40s. So in other words, they want
if
to run 40s.
If you want to run 40s and use 40s, you should be on 1 tons.
Yeah. Because we do have a customer who's running 40s on stock axles on a Gladiator. I don't know how that thing hasn't... Anyways, he's doing it.
That Jeep's very heavy, too.
So you got to think about all the rolling mass, the unsprung weight, everything that's in there. That adds so much of that shock load we were talking about earlier onto axle shafts and gears and everything like that. It's just not
the only way you're really getting away with it. You're not really pushing the Jeep too much.
No.
Like, you're not off-roading. You're overlanding.
Yeah.
Like, if you're seriously using 40s...
You need axles.
You're gonna need the axles. That's why I'm not gonna go above a 37 ever, because I just don't want to be wider.
Yeah.
Like up here, you have to make your vehicle look so dumb to cover the tires on a full-size 1-ton axle.
We can't have tire poke here, or in other words,
we already have enough tire poke, and we already are illegal technically. So if we did the other one, the tire will be out of the fender.
Yeah.
Like there's no point even having the fender at that point.
Yeah.
So
doing that, if you go to 40s, that's part of it. The other thing you see on the internet a lot is, why do I need axles? Is because the front axle disconnect is just going to snap in half. So that passenger side of your front axle is really 2 pieces, right? It had the front axle disconnect in there.
There's 2 cast housings.
2 cast housings. And
a tube in the middle.
The ones you see where there's a smiley face, like the whole Jeep basically collapsed on that front axle.
That doesn't happen as often as the internet portrays. Yeah. Originally, when it first happened, I think it was an axle company trying to get people to buy axles.
Yeah.
Realistically, I have personally seen one person do it.
Yeah, we've seen one person.
And it was the same person that just broke the 4 teeth.
Could be.
He could be literally within spitting distance.
We should not have given him a V8. That was a mistake.
Apparently, or a hard drive.
That was a mistake. That was a total mistake. So that comes up a lot.
But realistically, he missed a cross ditch playing with his V8 power.
Shock load. Across that whole axle housing.
It's kind of like, it's just... Yeah. Sometimes you trip and run into things. It's just how it is.
I did that with my EcoDiesel Gladiator. I came around a corner too fast, admittedly too fast, and all of a sudden there's a cross ditch there. There's no way I'm stopping in time, so I managed to kind of slide into it, and after that I had a little bit of bend on one side.
And your plug welds didn't look the greatest.
Yeah,
we were watching them regularly.
Yeah, so we actually marked them with paint, because I had cracks along the housing, so we marked them with paint marks and everything, and just kept an eye on it over time to make sure it wouldn't grow.
And then we sold it away from us.
Yeah, so we
traded it in so we didn't have to deal with it, right?
And it's still being fine.
And it's still going fine. He loves he's out in Newfoundland.
Yeah. Now, with the 24s that we noticed when we started doing 24s, the front axle disconnect is actually missing, but it's still a 2-piece axle shaft in there.
That's the sneaky thing they did.
Sneaky.
They're like, well,
got all these,
we don't believe in this axle disconnect. It didn't work. But we ordered 4 billion housings.
Front housings.
Too bad, guys. You're getting these housings.
Yeah.
Oh, all right, I'm getting the housing. At least I have no 2-piece drive shaft. Oh.
Yeah.
Actually, you do.
We have a lot of those lying around,
We've had
too.
those fail, too, because underneath that deleted fad is some plastic retainer holding the axle shafts
so there's
together.
Still 2 pieces in there.
Yeah.
It's just the motor's missing. There's a plate on the back of the fad, but it's still there.
But most people don't have an issue.
No.
So, honestly...
It's good to be aware of.
I would be aware of it, but I also would not run out to change them.
Yeah.
Day you get the Jeep. How about use your Jeep and see how you actually will push it?
Yeah, before you go spending huge amounts of money on axles and that kind of thing.
Because we haven't sold as many axles as you'd think.
Trussing. People talk about trussing. I get that a lot. They're like, "Oh, do you guys truss axles here?
No.
Like axle assemblies? No, don't do that.
No.
Don't do that because it's."
I'm okay with you doing it.
Yeah.
We're just not going to do it because 9 times, like, there's been proven ways where people will still break a diff or bend a diff, even with all the trussing in the world.
Yeah.
So
you got to pull everything apart.
A lot of the times, the truss could get in the way of certain suspension brands' parts.
Yeah, we've seen that.
So there's that. It might sometimes bang up against something that it wouldn't normally hit when you're fully compressed.
Yep.
The person you have install it might not be very good at welding and understand heat and cooling.
Right.
And you could bend the axle from overheating.
Yep.
From welding it. So, and if you're like, oh, well, the trusses are cheap. They are. They're just cut pieces of metal.
Yeah.
Putting them in, like, you probably should spend, for the truss and the labor, you should probably at least be paying $1,000.
Yeah.
Like, to have it done properly.
Have everything blown apart, like pull it all apart.
Yeah, like it's...
Yeah.
Just put that money aside for an axle housing.
Yeah, that's what I usually tell people too with that. The other thing that comes a lot is when we get regears done, a lot of our customers opt at that time because just to save on the labor is we do a diff cover.
It's a good idea.
Yeah.
Like, not all diff covers are created equal, though.
Yeah.
It's like, obviously, the factory gives you the cheapest one they can get, which is a stamped steel one that has a stupid lip on it that catches on rocks and peels back. Yeah. It's kind of like a sardine can.
Yeah.
And it's good to get rid of. I like that they put a reusable gasket from factory, like GM does with the transmission pan.
Yeah, it makes it easier.
But that makes it easy. But a diff cover. And not all, like I said, not all diff covers are the same.
Right.
Couple things to look for. Like a big bulky A or B front diff cover, sometimes makes contact with the steering stabilizer.
Yeah, it interferes with the steering
stops it from going its full travel or bangs into it. Because sometimes it's just generically made for a 44.
Right.
Just might not be your 44, but the bolt pattern is the same, and nobody bothered to test anything.
Right.
There's also fabricated diff covers.
Okay.
So when you weld all the pieces together and then you bolt that on, well, the downside is welding creates heat, which causes warps.
Right.
So the nice thing about Next Venture Motorsports, when they do it, they weld it all together and then they machine it.
Yeah, they machine it.
So it's fully flat after it's been welded. So as long as your company's doing that, great. If not, there you could have a warped cover to start with.
Yep. But typically here we're doing like A or B ones or the Dana Track ones as well.
We've typically do Terraflex ones, Dana
Terraflex,
Track, Dana Spicer, Metalcloaks, Next Venture Motorsports, stuff like that. We've tried to buy like top tier stuff.
Yeah.
So the nice thing about some of them, like Metalcloak's new one in the front, it incorporates into a diff slider.
Okay. Yeah.
So now you got two forms of protection. Of a diff slider. Yeah. You can just
hit something, you slide right on, you scrape off it.
You can scrape over stuff, but it's into the cast cover, which it's modular iron, steel, or whatever it is. So that helps. Also, having a diff slider in the rear helps because then you can just drag your diff over things instead of worrying about. Because these diffs all have a lip.
They do, yeah.
So unlike the previous generation JKs, the bolts are kind of in a lip. So if you hit that lip hard enough, it's going to break a chunk of the cast iron off. Yes, I understand it's not the easiest to do, but vehicle weight plus force plus rock, you do the math.
Do the math. Going outwards, ball joints in the front differentials, ball joints.
Yeah.
So we've had quite a few people that use their Jeep really, really hard, and they get a bit of shaking. We end up doing the ball joint test. You can tell, your ball joints need to be redone. But just out of the gate, a lot of people are like, oh, I'm running 37s and I need ball joints, right? So talk a bit about ball joints and selection
We've
process
had the crazy thing is, out of all the customers we have, we don't have a lot of ball joint replacements required.
No.
Which is nice because it shows either they're good drivers or Jeep is building a better component. I don't know. And then a lot of the joints on the market are just white labeled versions of like Moog or somebody. Like they're not even like, oh, try our ball joints. Well, it's not their ball joint. It's just their name on it. There's a couple brands out there that actually went to bat to design better ball joint, supposedly. So we've got like the Dana Track makes a really good one. Terraflex makes a really good one. And then Metalcloaks, their new one went a lot of science into it, trying to disperse the load differently, so it's not all on one of the ball joints,
which is really neat. Check out their
I'm
their
looking
YouTube
at trying a set of those.
I'm
just not rushing out to put them in if I don't need them yet, because there's currently nothing wrong with mine because we haven't went anywhere yet.
Right.
So let's let's get some play.
Let's get some play before we do that.
And then we'll put them in, because they look really cool with the red cap that I hear they're changing.
Yep. Now, you referenced earlier talking about drive shafts. We quickly referenced that. So generally we're doing a lift like the ones we just did. We just lifted my two-door Jeep
and we just took out your drive shaft. It works fine.
Took the drive shaft out, so I don't have it.
We are both running the SEMA Bluetooth drive shaft.
Yes.
It works great. The app on my phone, Apple supports it.
Turn it on. Boom, there it goes.
Done.
So typically what we do is we happen to have a drive shaft company across the street
We
from
are
us,
lucky enough to have a drive shaft company across the street.
Yeah, and so they'll build one for us that's either a 1310. Now they're all 1350s, as you mentioned. So that's basically
most of them. I could ask for a 1310.
And they're double cardon, so instead of having the Zeppa joint on the transfer case side, we're getting a double cardon. So that helps you with getting a steeper angle of the drive shaft and not maxing out the Zeppa joint, right?
So about drive shafts.
Yeah.
I don't want to pop everyone's bubble here.
Oh.
They're basically all the same.
Yeah, they are pretty much.
If they're all made with good components, they're all the same.
Yeah.
So whether you order this brand, that brand, hopefully they're all Spicer components.
Yeah, as long as they're using Spicer components.
And the difference is the quality of the person putting it together.
Correct. Yeah.
Making it balanced properly and what quality of spray can they use to spray it with. Right. So that's why we don't bother ordering in drive shaft. One, because it's just we're going to pay the labor for no reason when it's across the street. But two, I can get a little bit more detailed than other people can, because I had both of our Jeeps measured, lifted, and on the ground, making sure that it's built specifically for it.
Yep.
And we're ordering some special little pieces for our drive shaft to be a little different.
Right.
I don't personally want grease fittings on my drive shaft.
I don't either.
I just don't want to get out and grease it. Honestly, I've had better luck over the years with a sealed Spicer joint than a greasable Spicer joint.
Right.
Because less water intrusion makes it in, and we live in the
rainforest
really wet
climate here,
where everything. So I find it's sealed better. And honestly, if I have to take a drive shaft out once every year and a half to go have it serviced, if it wears out, great. No big deal for me because it's across the street. But you just have to be aware of what you're getting.
Yeah.
Like, make sure, you've had it before where you've ordered drive shafts,
right,
and it didn't fit, even though it said it was for that lift.
Yeah,
and it when we put it in, it's basically fully compressed and banging into itself.
Yeah, I've had that before.
I've seen people where they've flexed out and the drive shaft came apart.
Yeah,
because it did not have enough slip.
Yep.
Crazy thing is, that's a lot of suspension issue too.
Right.
Because I had my Jeep with the 6-packs.
Yes.
15 inches of travel capable.
Right.
Sitting on the ground outside to on the hoist, fully hanging, it changed about, I think he said it was like an eighth to quarter of an inch.
Yeah, he said an eighth and a quarter. That's what he said this afternoon. Yeah.
There was no chance for mine to extend so far it'd fall out. And I don't even have a long arm, so there is axle wrap going on.
Yeah, there is.
So
definitely.
That's pretty impressive.
Yep.
So sometimes a failure of a drive shaft might be related to improper setup or just not a well-designed lift kit too. Right. So I'll be interested to see.
And then what we did, we just did a 4xe the other week, and we put out a video on that, is taking a Zeppa joint. Terraflex has a high-angle Zeppa joint.
Yes.
So what we did is just actually blow apart a nice brand new drive shaft on a 4xe and change out that transfer case Zeppa joint at the top there to be a high-angle one, and that worked fine instead of replacing, because we
that got a lot of comments.
That got tons of comments.
So allow me to explain why we did that. Yeah. So high-angle Zeppa joint, we were able to save the rest of the drive shaft. Mm-hmm. We put it in. It's going to operate. It has plenty of articulation. Yep. It has no problem. It is going to balance better on the highway. It is going to last longer. Right. You don't have to service it. Yes, it's not for every application.
Right. Yeah.
If you had a highly flexible lift kit with all the control arms and all the bells and whistles, and you wheeled a lot, I wouldn't tell you to get that drive shaft.
Yeah, you'd want a proper.
If you were an overland person that drives a lot in the city and goes on long trips and doesn't do a lot of rock crawling and stuff, it's perfect.
Yeah, it was a great option.
It's cheaper to get in when, unfortunately, you have to get some kind of drive shaft or drive shaft modification to lift a 4xe. So you have no choice. You're buying this.
Yeah.
When all the other vehicles, as long as you're not getting really flexy arms, up to a 3.5-inch lift, you can leave the factory one in.
Right.
So I did it for that application. But he was given 3 options.
Yep.
So we had a demo shaft. Yep. We could get him a new shaft. We could do this modification. He chose the modification.
Yep.
We gave him all the things. So... And we tried it to see if it would work for a year on Landon's Jeep.
Yeah, we did.
So it was there. We know it worked with no issues.
Ran that through Moab. And
so then why not try it?
Yeah. In that video you can watch, it shows Landon actually breaking apart the drive shaft, installing the new one, putting it all together, packing all the grease in there, all that jazz. So you can watch that on our YouTube channel. That just came out like a month ago.
Yeah, so what I'm thinking of doing, because like if you lift these two doors up on the hoist, they're pretty stretched out.
They are. Yeah.
The rear drive shaft, which is basically the size of this wrench.
Yeah, it's about that long.
So it has
so small.
2 stepper joints.
Yes.
So they're pretty stretched out, but they're not fully extended, but it's tight.
Yep.
I'm thinking
let's put one on either end.
Getting one on each end.
Yeah, put one on each end.
And that should give me more angle on both ends to make sure I don't have an issue there.
Yep.
So I'm going to contact our buddy Joe at Terraflex and see if he wants to play around with an experiment.
Yeah.
And because I don't really want to put a double cardan joint at the back.
No, I don't.
It's going to take up most of the drive shaft.
Yeah.
Like literally,
half
the drive shaft's like
double
this.
Cardan. Yeah.
And I just want to keep it simple, stupid, and less maintenance because it's just how I like to roll.
Cool.
So,
where'd you get that shirt?
Why?
It's pretty wild, that shirt. I like
this?
I like that shirt. Yeah.
This shirt is from harddaddy.com.
Okay.
It was on my Instagram.
Hello, Daddy.
Don't worry, guys. I have several.
Yes, he does have several.
So you will get to see them only for the podcast. It's literally a special just for the podcast.
True.
Because they're not long enough to walk around in.
No. And your hat, we're wearing KC hat tonight.
I got my KC hat on. It's pretty comfy, actually. It actually fits.
KC, we haven't run KC lights before, but
no, I'm excited.
I'm excited just to try them out.
I ordered you so many lights.
Yeah, a big box of stuff just arrived today.
Your Jeep is going to need bigger springs.
I saw there's a Gravity Titan.
There is a Gravity Titan bar. And that's just the beginning.
Oh my God! Okay, so this is going to be interesting.
Be
awesome. We went full bore on KC lighting, and for that we got a hat. So that's awesome.
I actually got 4.
You got 4 hats. Yeah, I think I got a shirt there too, which is cool. I'm not wearing it right now, but and then it's not the day today, but when we shot this podcast the first time, that was the practice podcast we did. At that time, it was actually August 22nd.
That was our broversary.
It was our broversary on August 22nd, man. So we've known each other for 12 years. 12 years. When you showed up at my house to buy something, I forget what it was.
It was the trim panels for the plastic bumpers.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
I thought they would look good on my basic bitch.
I had a Sahara JK.
And they never ended up installed. I just resold them to somebody.
Yeah, so you showed up at my front door for that.
But thanks to that day, I'm stuck doing this.
And then we went and wheeled, I think it was like the weekend after that, we hooked up and went wheeling together with a bunch of people. Britannia Mines. And
doesn't exist anymore.
Yes, so that's our broversary.
Like many other things.
12 years.
Holy cow. And we've spent how many of those Thanksgiving and Christmas?
Jeez. Anyways,
I still don't have a stocking on your mantle. This is bullshit.
Oh my God. So that wraps up our very high overview of gears, differentials, lockers, ball joints, drive shafts.
We don't know everything, guys.
We're not scientists. We're just
telling you what we do. But by all means, ask questions.
Yeah.
I have no problems learning, researching, or being wrong, because I've been married before, so I am fully aware of how it is to be wrong.
You've had a big wrong whoops before, but
I've had several whoops
since
before.
Then, you've had a lot of rights.
I have made some better. I've heard my men's brains don't fully develop till 35.
35, yeah.
So now that we're way over,
you're very matured now.
You're way over 35 now. You've hit the big 5-0.
Somehow I turned 50. I don't know how.
Oh man,
hurts so
you
much.
Old bastard.
I'm in so much pain right now. Just existing.
Well, it is. It's fine.
Existence is pain.
It is.
That's what I'm finding. Yeah, but
what do we have coming up?
What do we have coming up? So again, we're building 2 2-doors. So
we
like
just
some kind of jackasses, we decided to buy 2 2-doors because who lifts 2-doors anymore?
We finished your lift.
We finished my lift today.
So your lift is done today.
Yep.
My lift got done 2 weeks ago.
Right.
So we have wheels and tires and a lift kit.
Wheels and tires and lift kit. We can actually go wheeling.
We're not going wheeling.
Okay.
I'm not leaving pavement till it's done.
Yeah, I need to.
I don't like working on destroyed vehicles.
I need bumpers. I'm just going to wreck
Well,
everything.
I need a winch.
Yeah.
And I can't put it on the plastic
I plan on putting this thing in some absolutely stupid position. So
I have no doubt we're going to get there whether we try it or not.
As we do it. So, and it's by the time we get out, it's already September. It'll be October. So snow in the mountains is going to come usually.
I'm
in
hoping
November.
to be wheeling in November.
Yeah. So hopefully in November we'll be wheeling. Like we're going to be wheeling in snow, trying to get as high alpine as we can, most likely.
And we've got to be able to camp. So we have stuff incoming. I've figured out the tents.
Yep.
The organization is incoming from Goose Gear. We got to get regeared next. That's the next thing is the regear and the lockers, which we'll shoot a video on that.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Because you're going to find out how fun it is to drive around on these square Minecraft tires you friggin' got.
I did 13.5 17s.
E-rated
on a 2-door, which
Thank you, Toyo.
It's a dumb idea. But yeah, so we got Toyo sent those along, and so we'll try those out and see what they are. Right now, Jeep's behind me. The tires stick out quite a bit, so I don't know. Got to find a way to either cover up mud flaps or whatnot. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to drive. I took it for just a quick drive. Yeah, it handles very,
it's like a Tonka toy.
It's like a Tonka toy. It's so short and tall, and
it's so good.
I was flying over curbs at the Tim Hortons here, and just like, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I didn't stop for the speed bumps.
Yeah, just right over
right
them,
through
boom,
there.
boom. Yeah, it's very different suspension. Like again, Metalcloak builds suspensions for a different purpose than Terraflex. Very different engineering, but again, the outcome is different. It's different for a reason. So we're going to be pushing these things pretty hard. So that's why we went with Metalcloak this time to try it out and see what happens.
We want to get back to our roots. Rock crawling, wheeling, having fun.
Flipping it on its
Remember
side.
what fun was?
I remember that. It was a long time ago, though.
It was.
a long time ago.
It was. And
I was back in my 30s.
gas was way cheaper back then,
It was way cheaper.
Holy cow.
Way cheaper.
At least we're only putting regular gas in these Jeeps.
Yeah, I'm not putting premium. Well, aren't you supposed to be putting 89 in yours?
Sure.
Yeah, so you're not.
Hasn't had it yet. Drives great.
He's putting 87 in his, but
yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's it, man. We'll call this one. Thanks for tuning in. Please follow us. Ask all your questions. Put the comments in there.
Ask your questions. Make a phone call. I don't care.
Phone us. Phone's going to ring every time we put one of these out. The phone rings for days and days from all over North America.
Yeah, Joe Rogan doesn't have his phone number listed.
No, he doesn't.
Yeah.
He doesn't have the guts.
He just doesn't have the guts.
Doesn't have the guts.
Nope.
But our phone number on our website, you can just call us anytime. So cool. We're out. You've been listening to Ring of Desire, Pinion of Passion. We're two dudes, one wrench. If you'd like to support our team, check out our website at epic-4wd.com, where Canadians of above-average intelligence make super high-quality products for your late-model Jeep, such as the Kraken tire inflation system and the Crow overhead molly rack. Stay tuned for more tales to come. No, Stephen, for the last time, don't have any Rubicon takeoff axles lying around the shop that you can buy.